Good evening, everybody. Today is June the 8th, 2021. On behalf of the Rochester City School District Board of Education, our superintendent, and our independent monitor, welcome and good evening. We really feel blessed and honored that you would choose to be in front of your monitors when you could probably be doing something probably just as interesting, if not more interesting. But this, we all would agree, is very important, and we're very glad that you have joined us this evening. But let's get right to the business so that we all can get to those other important matters. Of course, we begin by calling the meeting to order, and I have done that. The time is now 5:37. We have, I think, one speaker, is that right? And no written comments, Madam Clerk?
Correct, President White. Okay, so I'll begin by bringing in our one and only speaker. It is Ms. Kristen French, and she will be addressing the board regarding community contact communications. So Ms. French is going to join us now. Ms. French? Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Okay, whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's critical for the health of our district to equitably provide for our students learning opportunities that they want and need. As we accomplish this, we must clearly communicate to the public these offerings. If our district leaders truly want to retain the current students and families we have, as well as increase their enrollment, then we need to be more creative with our community messaging. There are charter schools actively trying to recruit our students by sending mailers, displaying ads in local publications, billboards, and on front lawns, and literally going door to door. RCSD will be writing a $98.5 million check to fund charter schools this upcoming school year. This cannot continue if we want the district to flourish. Investing funds in advertising for our district more readily is necessary if we want the public to know what we have for our students. RCSD registration flyers should be available year-round throughout all neighborhoods in places such as church halls, neighborhood stores, rec centers, libraries, barbershops, salons, restaurants, and banks. Even though our district has a long way to go with opportunities we provide for our students, we can at least highlight what we do and will have. When the public visits the RCSD Facebook page, they are met with pessimistic and incomplete description of our district. I'll read a portion of the message found under the About section. We commend employees who go above and beyond in doing all they can to help students do well in school, but we need help. Many of our students are not reading at grade level. Many of our students miss too many days of school. If you can't read, you can't learn. If you're not in school, you can't learn. We ask all parents to read to their child every day. Children can also read to you. If you know families that are struggling with language or reading or anything else, there are numerous community resources available to them in Monroe County. We must work together and focus on the areas that we are responsible for in order to ensure that all our students have the tools they need to succeed in the classroom and in the workforce. So that's the description on the Facebook page. End of quote. I challenge this board to have a different description created, and it shouldn't be the responsibility of one person. It should be a collaborative effort. Perhaps in the description, the following programs can be included: the School 16 partnership with Center of the Youth, the School 19 Arts Integration, the School 25 STEP speech program, School 29 Chess Club and the GEM program, the Interact social communication classrooms throughout the district, the diverse language learners throughout our school, active restorative practices in our schools such as SOTA and the World Inquiry, East High TLI courses, and the list goes on. So let's intentionally invest the increase in state funds and the federal stimulus money into sustainable courses, programs, and activities for our students, and proudly advertise it to the public, all we have to offer. I mean, the other option is to have district leaders deprive our students and publicize exactly what you're doing. I personally like the first suggestion better, so thank you for listening and considering these ideas.
Thank you, Ms. French. We appreciate your comments tonight.
Thank you.
President White, that is it for this evening in terms of.
Could just remind those folks that happen to be with us tonight what the board or the board staff requires if a person wants to speak at a future board meeting?
Sure. So members of the public who are interested in addressing the board at board meetings or committee meetings may do so by emailing the Board of Education at boardofelducation@rcsdk12.org by noon of the day of the meeting to sign up to speak. You may also call the board office as well to do so. You must provide your name, your affiliation, so whether you're a community member, parent, student, or staff member, you would need to say that, and then also the topic that you'll be addressing. Once you do so, a member of board staff will reach out to you and provide you with the Zoom link so that you can join the board meeting. And if you'd also like to submit public comment, you may do so by also emailing the board email boardofeducation@rcsdk12.org by noon of the meeting. And those will be posted on the website as well as disseminated between all the board members.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wade. We appreciate your providing that valuable information, and the Board of Education really does encourage people to speak up, share your criticisms, your concerns, or if you have the opportunity or the insight, even your compliments about district staff and things that are going right. We encourage those as well, because as much as a criticism, a compliment can sometimes drive positive best practices. So moving on to our next item on the agenda, we're going to have our Vice President, Cynthia Elliott, introduce and preside over a very critical ceremony that we're going to have, which is the recognition of our student leaders. Vice President Elliott.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Tony Jordan, who will begin the program, and then I'll come in later with some words of congratulations and all that good stuff. So Mr. Jordan, will you start the program for us, please?
Yes, I will. Good evening, everyone. And I'm very excited and very, very, very proud to be able to recognize these young people. You know, the news does not cover these young people. You won't see them on the headlines tomorrow, but they are well deserving. You all get to see Anaya frequently at our meetings, but we have many more Anayas in our district, and these students represent those students who have excellent leadership skills, great citizenship, commitment to learning and to their future. So I get a chance to hang out with them, and it's the most humbling and rewarding, one of the most rewarding parts of the job that I have. So just a little bit about the Student Leadership Congress before I start. I'm not going to read the mission statement, but I will read the vision statement. The Student Leadership Congress members from the Rochester City School District provide positive leadership, powerful voice, outstanding service to the Rochester City School District and community. They work with the student body, district administration, the Board of Education, and the Rochester community to foster positive social and academic outcomes for our CSD students. And they do a fabulous job. They meet often with our leaders, lengthy meetings that you know, require them to really have great attention to detail and what's going on. So these students throughout the year have discussed our budget. They've discussed facilities. They've discussed wellness of their fellow students in regards to COVID-19. They've taken on some serious challenges throughout the year. So some of what their role of the SLC members are to represent their school at the meetings monthly and to report back to their school, to keep their school informed in relevant citywide and school and community issues, to advise the school-based planning teams and a Board of Education as a part of our decision-making processes, and to work with other policies and projects that the SLC members develop throughout the year. And, you know, oftentimes things that really affect youth pop up, and they stand up for those challenges and issues. Similar to what happened last summer with the Black Lives Movement. Our students were very active in the process to, you know, have justice and peace in our community. They attend and host weekly meetings at their school. They represent their school at monthly SLC meetings. We kind of talked about that. They also participate in training and develop their own personal skills in public speaking, leadership, and community organizing. They work on real important issues. We talked a little bit about that, but some of those issues are equity, racial equity, student rights, responsibilities, school discipline, and others. So at this time, I'm going to announce the students and their schools that they represent. First school up is East High School. And from East, we have Maya Adams, who is a 7th grader, who is a powerful young lady who is out there at a young age doing some great work. We have Desiree Garrett, who is a highly involved student on her way to University of Rochester. We have Ray Castellano. He's a 12th grader over at Leadership, along with Michael Ford, a 12th grader at Leadership, Devontae Jackson, and Justice Presley. These 4 gentlemen are also our New York State MBK Fellows. And these gentlemen did something that is unique and exciting. They went out on a home visit, attendance visit for students who had been absent. This is one of the issues that our students take on. And the results of that was amazing because they could connect instantly with their colleagues, their fellow students. They encouraged 2 students to return to school. It was just amazing to see the conversation that took place with these 4 young men and these particular students who had been absent from school. From Northeast High School, we have Omariana Curry, up and coming young leader. We have Rain Powell, 11th grader, and Mamadou Saul, a 12th grader. At School of the Arts, we have Amara Anderson. We have Tiernan Haley, Ness Jaff. Ness's brother, Malik, the board members who were here a few years ago may remember Malik. He was the student rep a few years ago. We have Alexander Powell. You might recognize the Powell last name. And Alexander came to us at a very young age and has really, paid a great debt of service over many years. We have Jade Rodriguez and Nathaniel Schoonover. And I'll go back to Jade real quick. She's going to be entering a career in military. And, we talk about the different challenges the students take on. She's taken on the challenge of helping students understand what a career in the military really would look like. World of Inquiry, we have Mr. Javen Cruz. He's also highly involved. He's a part of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. We have Aiden Delahante. Aiden has been with us. He's one of those students who started very young, and I've got to watch him grow up through the process. Jasmine Henry, Robert Ruth is another one that came to us from 58 School at a young age. You all know Anaya Simmons. Tatiana Spencer was a former advisor and student rep on the board as well. And we have Cyree Ware. And from Edison, we have Justice Anderson. And at early college, we have Stephen Simmons. And you never know, how small Rochester is and how large it can be as well. But Stephen comes from a great family history and community involvement and engagement. And I won't tell you it all, but we have a rec center named after his grandmother, and his great-grandfather was very involved and one of the first gentlemen involved in the Negro League from the Rochester area. So we just have some exciting connections within our group of young people. School Without Walls, we have Layla McFadden. And from Wilson, we have Beautiful Ford, a 12th grader. Finally, how do students join the SLC? They can visit us at our website and complete the interest form. They can log on to our Instagram page. We got young folks that have instituted the Instagram page, which is exciting because I'm not social media savvy. Our next meeting will be June 13th, and the location and time is TBD. That is a Sunday, I believe, because the students are very busy this time of year and really voted to commit to meeting on a Sunday. We had our first Sunday meeting last month, and we had a fabulous turnout. And it just kind of says how committed these young people are. And I want to just take my hat off to our superintendent. She has made most meetings this school year. And, I can honestly just say we have not had a superintendent make most meetings or any meetings during my tenure as a part of the Student Leadership Congress. And I wouldn't be able to, say congratulations to the students without recognizing our adult advisors. We have Rahima Wynn, who you all see on the screen. We have Stephen Lamort, who is in our grants department now. We have Mercedes Yu. I never try to do Mercedes' last name. She's in our communications department. And we have Jessica Norquist, who is a counselor and social worker over at Northeast High School. And she actually leads their leadership team, their student leadership team. So I thank you all for recognizing our students. For the students that are on, we will be delivering certificates signed by the board to you. And once again, my humble and sincere thanks. You are an awesome group of young people. We should be very proud that our district has these kind of leaders coming out and will be out. When you all step aside, they will be ready to step up. They're actually going to step up before y'all get out the way. So they coming. And at that point, I will just say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Elliott.
Thank you, Tony. I really do appreciate that. And, unfortunately, because of a lot of the negative things that are in the district, we don't get an opportunity to really focus on the good things that go on in our district. And, we see a lot of things that are going on in the community, a lot of killings and, shootings and just overall violence. One of the things that I have learned, when I see that kind of stuff happening, God is doing something else good. And when you see that kind of negative, something like this, where we've got these students doing great work within our district and in our community, and they're just getting started in their career, it just leads me to believe I now look at the negative things in a positive light, because God is behind the scene doing something great. And I think that with all of these students that are working within our district and working within our community, that they're going to do great things. My concern is, Tony, is that I hope they come back to the Rochester community once they graduate from college and work within our community. I know New York and Chicago and DC, Atlanta looks good, but we need you here. We need you to take the reins and become leaders in our communities. And so on behalf of, and I'll let President White say a few words on behalf of the board, we just congratulate you. We love you. We thank you. We appreciate all that you do within the Rochester City School District to make it a great place. And I'm believing by faith that because of your efforts, Rochester City School District will be one of the greatest educational institutions in the world. So again, congratulations. And I'll turn it over to President White for him to say a couple of words. President White.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Let me just say, the best evidence that this district is doing its job, at least in many corners and buildings of this district, are the students. And the best witnesses to that are many board members. I mean, I, for example, can testify that last week, I think it was, Tony, I had invited Martin Luther King's classmate and lifelong friend to Rochester. And he wanted to speak to students of this community. Who did I call? I called the superintendent and and Dr. Nelms. And I said, I need some students to hook up with Dr. Bechet at the University of Rochester in their LaChase building. And those students did us proud then, and they do us proud tomorrow, and they will do us proud yesterday. And each one of us as board members, those names are not unfamiliar to board members. Those names are very familiar to us as board members, because each of us have had contact with them. In some instances, they are the children of board members. In other instances, they are just young folks who are doing their things, going to great colleges. These are the stories that the media doesn't pick up. And thanks to Tony and the superintendent and the adults that support this good work, these young folks are, and of course, these young folks are out there spreading the word. I'll use your analogy or your commentary, Vice President, spreading the gospel that this district is doing its thing. And shame on those folks who only want to talk about those young folks, and they're in the minority, that are having problems, because a good number of our students are out there doing their thing just like any other student in the surrounding suburbs. So thank you, Tony, for giving them the opportunity to do what they do. Thank you, Superintendent, for giving Tony the flexibility to do what he does in such a unique and powerful way. And we pray that they will continue to be able to provide that best example for this district.
Commissioner Malloy, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to President White for having arranged the wonderful enrichment opportunity at U of R 2 weeks ago. Thank you so much for opening that up to students from across the Monroe County area. But thank you also to Tony for bringing students there and just providing that enrichment for our youth. They showed up. Thank you.
They did.
Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, President White.
I should tell you all that Dr. Bechet has advanced degrees. He's from Egypt. He is 94 years old and he's seen a lot. He's got his doctorate, I think, in psychology, and hung out with the best and the brightest, including Dr. King. And he was extremely impressed by the dialogue that he had with those students. The questions I will shut up, but he asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think we are as a nation? That's what he asked them. Don't think because he's 94 years old, he ain't got it. And don't think because they're like 70 years younger than him that they ain't got it. The answers that they gave were chilling, but thoughtful and insightful. And as Vice President Elliott says, we can all expect that given those answers and all the things they're doing, they are going to be the next leaders for this district. So again, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Dr. Myers. Thank you, Dr. Nelms. Thank you, Amy, for bringing those students out from Brighton, because it allowed us to have a very diverse crowd. All right. Is there any other hands being raised? Let me go to this participant screen. No? Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is we're going to need to go into executive session. I know it sounds strange for folks out there watching. Usually we do it at the end of the meetings, but our superintendent, I think, has rationally and reasonably request that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing a particular person or employee early on in this meeting. So I'm looking for that motion.
So moved.
Been moved by Vice President Elliott, seconded by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of going to executive session for the purpose of discussing a particular person or the terms and conditions of their employment indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Like the ayes have it. Those folks watching, we will be back very shortly. Okay, surprise, surprise, the Board of Education, we're back. I told you it would not be that long. We had some matters that had to be discussed in executive session. And so now we're at that portion of our agenda where we are going to take some votes on those matters that we were discussing in executive session. Those matters happen to be entitled Resolution 849. So I need a motion from one of my colleagues to advance for discussion Resolution 849.
Move. Second.
Heard Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Clark. Any questions or comments regarding Resolution 849? I know Commissioner LeBron. Yep.
Thank you. I just want to welcome the two new principals, and I won't say names, but I'll let Dr. Myers-Smalls name names, but I just want to personally welcome them, especially to one of the schools that I'm the board liaison to, and just want to state on public record that I fully support both individuals and have seen them up close and personal in their work and commitment in the district over the years at different school settings. So I do think that they are both amazing candidates, and I just want to commend the superintendent as well for her final selection. Thank you.
Superintendent, unless I'm missing, and I could be because the screen is looking strange, any other board member want to make a comment? All right, Superintendent, I believe you were going to sort of formally introduce these newest potential, well, actually, we'll go ahead and take
Got to vote first.
Yeah, we got to vote first. All right. All right. There being no further questions or comments, it looks like we're ready to take a vote. So let's go ahead and do that. All those in favor of Resolution 849, make sure your camera is on and indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any nays? Seems, Madam Clerk, the ayes have it. And now you can do your intros.
Great. So thank you so much, President White. Good evening again. The first individual that I'd like to ask come on screen is Miss Rhonda Neil. She was just unanimously appointed by the board as the principal incumbent to Wilson Foundation. Rhonda previously was in our school district and served a year in the Buffalo City Public Schools, and she has an extensive background in career and technical education. But when she was in her district, she did spend time as an assistant principal at Wilson Foundation Academy. I've known Rhonda actually a long time when she was in the administration program at St. John Fisher. But when I interviewed her, she came across incredibly passionate, very knowledgeable about the school, and I feel very confident to recommend her. And thank you for affirming her as the next principal at Wilson. Rhonda, welcome, and I wasn't sure if you had anything that you wanted to say.
Well, thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Superintendent Myers-Smalls, for this wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to working with the families at Wilson Foundation Academy, our students, our families, and the staff. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm very happy to be back in RCSD.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate, incumbent principal, is Corey Hepburn. Corey was at another one of our Big Five schools, Syracuse, or he currently is there, and he worked in our district previously. He has such an extreme passion for scholars, and if you go on social media, you'll see Corey has, even though he's very loyal to Syracuse, he has been very actively involved with happenings in Rochester, still lives in Rochester, and just as enthusiastic, excited, passionate, knowledgeable about school transformation. And I can't be more thrilled to introduce to the commissioners, to our staff, and to those on Facebook and YouTube, Mr. Corey Hepburn. Welcome and congratulations, Corey. And if you had a few things you wanted to say, please feel free to do so now.
I'll just say, thank you all for trusting me with this huge responsibility to do the very critical work that surrounds impacting change for our community, for the student scholars we serve, and for our teachers and staff. Believe me, and I can assure you, you won't be let down.
Thank you, Corey. With that, I turn it back over to President White. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Myers. On behalf of the Board of Education, we want to thank the HR chief and the school chiefs and everyone involved in these selections that you've made over the last month or two, or since you've been superintendent. You've brought us some excellent candidates, and the votes have not been difficult because you brought us quality candidates. And of course, thank you, Superintendent, for leading this effort. And on behalf of the board, I want to welcome Rhonda and Corey. I also want to admit that at my age, sometimes you don't remember names, but you remember faces. Somebody say amen to that. I could not, for the life of me, remember what Rhonda looked like or what Corey looked like. But when I saw their faces on Zoom, I immediately remembered what committed, caring professionals and on behalf of the entire Board of Education, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and bringing your passion, your love for our district and our students and our families. So welcome back on behalf of the Board of Education. Okay, unless there are no further comments, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. Commissioner Powell, we're hoping you can get us through the first readings of these various policies.
Sure. Rahima's bringing up the list. Now, we did just discuss these at the policy committee. This is the first reading, and it was suggested to me that I didn't need to pause for each and every one of them to wait for questions or comments. If anyone has a question or comment about any of the policies in front of us, we can call out those individual ones. Commissioner Elliott, I do see your hand is up, but let me just talk through the four that you see here. Policy 4216, which is transfer students with disabilities. Policy 4217, identification and registration of students with disabilities. Policy 4218, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Policy 4219, independent education evaluations. Policy 4220, special education mediation. Policy 4221, impartial hearings. Policy 4222, adopted credential options for students with disabilities, and 4240, wandering and elopement. So this is the first reading. We will have another reading at our next special meeting, and then by our June business meeting, we'll be ready for a vote. So Commissioner Elliott, your question or comment?
I didn't have any question about the special education policy, but about the 5100, the attendance policy.
Okay, well, we'll take that up. I'll make sure I call on you then.
Okay.
If there are no questions about this block, this is the third block of special education policies. We've already been through first and second reading of the, all of the readings of section of sort of batch number 1 and 2. And so this is all that remains of the special ed policies in our wholesale review. I don't see any hands for questions or comments. So that concludes the special ed review. We have two others. We have the attendance policy that Commissioner Elliott just mentioned. The change to this policy is to update it in response to online learning. Having lived through the COVID experience, we now know that there's a lot more we can do with online learning than just the or remote learning rather than just like computer-based instruction courses. So this policy is updated in this section. essentially capturing lessons learned in our COVID world. Commissioner Elliott, your question? Commissioner Elliott?
Yeah, I was muted.
Okay.
My
Get a problem.
apologies. In reading the overall policy, not with regard to the additions that are being made, but just in the policy itself. For example, it talks about satisfactory attendance, and that doesn't seem to be measurable. You know, what does it mean, and how would our community interpret what it means to have satisfactory attendance per market period? Is what I think the language says. And so I just tend to believe that that language in there needs to be more specific. And I'll ask the district to respond to that inquiry.
Rather than taking a guess in response, I would ask that we put that in the question log.
Okay.
Sure that it gets answered in time for the second reading.
Okay.
And share the answer with everyone so that everybody feels comfortable with that answer. Okay.
All right. And I have a couple of more, Commissioner Powell, that could be in the question log. The guidelines for withdrawal, and there were some bullet points that was in that policy. I just want to make sure that the district is adhering to that we're actually adhering to what those guidelines are in the policy, and if the district can get back on that. And then when there is counseling that occurs with our students, are we preventing them when we're talking about they wanted to withdraw or drop out? Are we counseling them to remain in school? And what could be some of the reasons that if they are participated in this counseling, what are some of the reasons that they are communicating that they want to, the reasons why they want to withdraw? So if you got that, we could put that in the question log and you all can get back to the board about those questions.
Okay, very well. I'm sure that if Rahima didn't take good notes, she can review the tape and we'll get it down into the question log for you. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Super. Any other questions on the attendance policy update?
Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
Just before we move on from attendance, I just want to remind you that this update was only in regards to the addition of the online distance and remote learning portion. This policy is still slated for full review in the students portion of the policy manual update.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. Hopefully your answer now will allow us to move this forward regardless of what the answer is. And if folks are uncomfortable with the answers given to Commissioner Elliott's questions, we can take those aspects of the policy up when we do our full review, as you say. Okay. Now, I think the last policy we have up for review is our code of conduct. Again, this has been years in the making, great deal of public engagement. And we've had our required public hearing on this. So this is first reading, if you will, of the full code of conduct. I will not attempt to read, notwithstanding that it says it's a first reading. I invite anyone who isn't already familiar with the work that's gone into this, that they go to our website. Our board docs has a track changes version. It has a PowerPoint presentation that shows a summary of the big changes involved in this effort. And I am looking for hands for questions and comments. And nothing is showing up yet. So Commissioner Adams.
So I just need to make the comment that this is a long time coming. A lot of work was put into this, and I am just honored that the board is able to move this on at this time. And I just needed to say that. All right.
Thank you for that remark, Commissioner Adams. I see no further questions or comments, so I'm going to turn the floor back over to the board president.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Really thank you for your work and sharing our policy committee. You have diligently moved us forward at a speed, but yet carefully and thoughtfully reviewed all of our policies. And I should also thank Steve. I know there's a team of people doing this, Steve, Rahima, and other members of the superintendent's team that have gotten us to the point where we have a policy. We will have, before you are done, Commissioner Powell, I am sure you and Rahima are done, we will have a policy manual that has been completely reviewed and it is up to date. So thank you for that work. We truly do appreciate that, because that is almost like year-round work. Rahima, on behalf of the board, really thank you for your diligence. You came on to this position how many months ago? How many? You're muted.
Oh, in late October.
Late October, and you've done all this great work. I've said this before. I didn't know that anybody could match Deborah Flanagan's due diligence, and I'm not comparing, but Rahima, you have definitely stepped into some shoes and made them your own. So thank you for that work. All right, next item on the agenda is for me to turn the gavel over to our Vice President. Vice President Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we get started, I just want to make sure, Rahima, the standing committee time for the chief academic officer is not 6:30 to 8, is it? Is that for the entire meeting, the time frame?
Correct, that's for the entire meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Excellence, the Equity and Student Achievement Committee. Our agenda includes an update from the Chief Academic Officer, an update from the state monitor with regard to the academic plan, and then we will have a presentation by the superintendent regarding the quarterly state monitor update. And so before we begin, I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes from the May 11th Equity and Student Achievement Committee of the Whole.
I'll move it.
Can I get a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carried. Thank you. The motion carried. Agenda, the minutes are approved. And so we will have a presentation now by Dr. Kathleen Black, who's our Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Black.
Good evening, commissioners. If the PowerPoint can come up. So our updates.
Hey, Dr. Black.
Ma'am.
Before you start, I just got a message that our parent rep is waiting and she's in the waiting room. Can we bring our parent rep in, please?
Yes, we just let her in the room.
All right, thank you.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, Dr. Black, go ahead.
You're fine. Make sure I had them in better background. So good afternoon or good evening, commissioners. I come to you this evening with a brief update as per our committee needs. I will name on the front end that our superintendent will be producing and providing some updates as well. So you may hear some information that is expanded and or duplicative, which demonstrates alignment of our efforts this evening. Next slide. So as you know, everything that we do in service of academics in our department is aligned to our strategic plan, namely our efforts around engagement and providing high quality learning experiences and around leading. However, everything that we do is aligned to our priorities. Next slide. So the 3 update areas you'll hear this evening is a brief overview of the division as a request to just highlight the wonderful team that I get the privilege to support and the efforts that we have oversight over. An update around our summer programming and some wonderful initiatives that we are bringing forth to well round out what we're giving our students. And then some deliberate updates around teaching and learning, namely around our curricular development efforts and our progress around developing an assessment program for the district. Next slide. So just an overview of our division. The Division of Teaching and Learning and or the team that I get the privilege to support is inclusive of our core content area directors, our essentials area directors, the Office of Professional Learning, the Office of School Innovation, which has oversight over our TSI, CSI, receivership school efforts, as well as our community schools and our expanded learning programming. And as of July 1st, the Department of Multilingual Education, formerly known as DOME, will also be coming into the division. So as an aside, the people that I get to support, the folks who are on the team, have oversight and influence over all of our academic initiatives. So your core content areas, again, the things that support core content, your specials or your essentials. We take care of professional development for the district overall. We give specific attention to our schools that are in different accountability statuses. We think about time both inside and outside of the regular school day. We oversee some of our provisions around our community schools. And again, coming into the division will be the work around our bilingual education programs, our ENL programming, and our world language. So that's the division that I get to support and serve, and the members of my team. Next slide. So updates on summer programming. You've heard every month we've come to you with an update around summer school and the traditional offerings of summer school. At last update, we shared that we were in the midst of our programs, in the midst of registration. I am pleased to share that our 2,500 seats for our receivership and our elementary programs are fully enrolled, and that we are eagerly anticipating our enrollment of our commencement students at the end of next week. So we'll be able to serve our full comprehensive number of about 3,500 students in our summer school programming. In addition to our summer school formal programming, we are working hard to think about and provide for some citywide RCSD sponsored events. You might hear them in other places called RCSD Takes. So we are looking to provide admission, entrance, and provisions to citywide attractions and things that our students typically might not have access to over the summer, as in some sporting events, some athletic and entertainment events, and access to some of our museums, galleries, and or the zoo. And finally, we are working with our citywide partners, including the city, the rec centers, and the libraries, to cultivate some more intensive summer-wide programs and partnerships, so that if students don't have access to an engagement with summer school as its traditional measure, they are still being tapped into and poured into for the summer as a result of multiple ways for us to partner and provide additional opportunities. Next slide, please. Our instructional updates. And so I want to share in our curriculum efforts that our scope and sequences for all of our core content areas, inclusive of our essentials, will be updated and ready to go for school year 21-22. So scope and sequence, again, our pacing guides for our core areas are in progress right now, and we have multiple efforts underway to make sure that those are ready to go.
Dr. Black, can you explain that for our audience, what you're talking about actually?
Sure.
Please.
Please close that. When we say scope and sequence and pacing guides, when we ask teachers to figure out or attend to teaching, we want to make sure that they have aligned things that shows them what they should be teaching in the order that we recommend things to be taught in. So when we say scope and sequence, it's the order. And we say pacing guide, it's how long. So how long should you be in a story? How long should you be in a math unit? How long should you be covering this part of social studies? So our team gives that guidance, and then teachers use that guidance and their professional responsibilities and judgment to cultivate high quality experiences inside of classrooms.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am. Second bullet is we're currently reviewing and selecting our intervention. So what do we give students when they're not understanding? Our assessment, how do we figure out what kids know and are able to do? And our enrichment, when students have met the bar, how do we push them further? We're currently identifying our resources to do those. So we're in the middle of an RFP process, which means we went out, we've gotten information from a lot of different providers. Our internal team has said which providers meet our needs, and we're currently now getting ready to siphon that information out and share to get additional input from our school partners and our community partners around our district-wide portfolio. The other thing that I am excited to share, and I got a preview this afternoon, but we are rolling out RCSD, a wide array of a summer professional development catalog. So big shout out to our Office of Professional Learning and all our contributors. We are going to be offering about 160 plus, that's our first volume, but 160 sessions over the course of the summer for our stakeholders and our staff to take advantage of to grow their professional knowledge base. So everything from procurement to instruction, social emotional learning. We have a very robust professional development catalog for the summer that will be going live towards the end of the week, but very excited about the work that our team has done to pull together summer PD for every member of our organization to take advantage of growing their practice over the summer. And then finally, around, again, curriculum and instruction, want to just highlight some pilots of best practices that we're able to take advantage of through the summer and through next school year. We'll be trying out and investing in practices in professional development, or like how we support our teachers around middle school math. We currently are in the midst of exploring middle school science curriculum. We have some schools who are going to be invested in an instructional coaching support for students and teachers who support grades 4 and 5. And we have multiple amounts of efforts around middle grade social studies. And again, the adoption and selection of a text that will support our African and African-American history instruction for high school. And so those are our highlights of our instructional updates. Next slide, please. So I wanted to forecast kind of what was coming as we end this school year and think about how we provision over the summer and go into next school year. Over the summer in our division, we'll be looking at our comprehensive assessment data from the school year to then figure out what we do for next year. So we know that we'll be receiving our students back into our buildings with a variety of gifts for us to build upon. And so all of that assessment data, all of what we know about what students know and need to know, we'll be using to inform what we then bring them back to receive in the fall. We will be sharing at our next ESA meeting our textbook adoption calendar and the processes that we're going to move forward to inform and get feedback from our board, our internal constituencies, and our families around the textbook adoption process. And so how do we select the appropriate textbooks? And remember, textbooks aren't just the hardcover book, it's the textbooks, it's the electronic books, it's the things our babies touch in order to make sure that instruction is well. And then, as we know, that there are a lot of funds and resources that we're going to have articulation of to move our babies in our buildings forward. And so a lot of our summer programming into the fall will be engaging with our multiple stakeholders, building on the work of our team that's already in force around forums, to think about our programs around high school supports, our expansions, and what we're ultimately going to do for our stimulus funding to make sure that we have high quality learning environments and high quality experiences for all of our babies when they arrive to us. And with that, I'll pause and say, any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Black. I see Commissioner Adams' hand is raised.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate the increase in the seating space for summer school. But when it goes to instruction, I've talked to a couple of parents and they feel that, like, especially 5th grade parents, say there's aligned units for math, say 1 through 10 for 5th grade, and for 6th grade, it's 10 through 20. There's some parents feel that they did not get all the units. Like maybe they only got 1 through 8. Now, when they go to 6th grade, they're not going to go back. 6th grade is 11 through 20. Where are we going to make up that gap? And so that's what I was asked to ask you.
Sure. So thank you for that question. I think it's a very appropriate question for us to respond to. So I think there's 2 pieces, and I'll pause. So in a grade level year, as you mentioned, Commissioner Adams, there are a series of units that teachers are expected to do with students, giving pacing and teachers' ability to meet students' needs. Sometimes that pacing gets off, whether it's delayed a bit or accelerated a bit. And so teachers use a judgment to give kids what they need. As we move forward into the next school year, recognizing that students may have not gotten the full breadth of the units, either for pacing decisions that were made or for timing adjustments that we made. We are going to be working over the summer and into next school year to do two things. I think the first one is to help teachers make the adjustments to figure out what students who are coming into their buildings, into their classrooms, what they know. And then how do you shift the instruction? How do you shift the teaching and learning to meet the needs of what kids bring to you, and to ensure that we are exposing kids to teaching kids material that they are supposed to know and be able to do. And so you may have heard us talk about unfinished learning. That's what that's indicative of. You may hear people talking about acceleration or remedying. We're not being remedial. We're meeting kids where they are and then taking them through the appropriate grade level material, by making some adjustments to ensure they get exactly the things that they need to be able to close the gap, so to speak. And I hope that answers your question.
You okay, Commissioner Adams? Any more response?
Yeah. No, I guess that was an answer. I do know that another answer would be some looping. This way the teacher would know where the gap is, but that we're not doing that. So your answer was good enough.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner LeBron?
One, I just want to say I actually am a little confused about that answer. I just feel like I didn't understand specifically what's being done in terms of learning loss. And I know that the state and the federal government is also, among parents, one of the stakeholders that's requiring us to have a plan and demonstrate what that plan is going to be in a very clear way. And I heard what you said, but that did not click for me as like an actual plan. Like, we're going to hire extra instructional teachers to be on site so that as kids are identified as needing that extra support there, that's the level of detail I personally would like to understand what we're going to do for learning loss. But my question is related to summer programming. So two things that you mentioned was the summer opportunities and the partnerships with the city and the rec for students who didn't make it into summer school, and just wanting to figure out if that's going to be free for families. So the city does run summer programs out of the rec centers. The rec centers are free, but their summer programming is not. And I know that it's an affordable rate. I just don't know how affordable is going to be when you're talking about like $125 a week for a family with our average medium income as it is in Rochester. So I wanted to understand, are we partnering to offer free opportunities? The library's free. So, and I work very closely with a lot of the local libraries, especially our downtown library. So I do know that there's intentional programming. Just wondering about what free opportunities exist for our families who did not get into summer school and are concerned about learning loss. And then the other piece is really for, I think this is an administration question, Dr. Black, because it's related to our buildings, our community-based organizations and their ability to use our buildings in the summer. So I just wanted to get an update on that, because I have been hearing from different CBOs that there's been some back and forth, and I just don't know where we stand on it. And I just want to be clear, I would not support us not opening our schools, especially to community-based organizations who may be trying to assist students with learning loss, and that we say you can't use our buildings because it's summer and COVID. So I'll stop there.
All right, so I'll take the middle question. Okay, wait, let me in order. All right, so summer programming and free opportunities. The additional programming that we are offering would be of very little or no cost to students. We're thinking about things like the zoo, the museums, some of the skating rinks, and the other provisions that usually have a cost that is prohibitive for our students to access. And so our RCSD takes opportunities would be providing access in the summer to students to have those experiences who don't have summer school. In addition, the other free access point would be, we are making sure that all of our electronic offerings, so all of the things that kids log into during the school year, that access is being provided through the summer with some initiatives from our teams to inspire agency around it, right? So we're right now thinking about what monitoring and incentive, so to speak, can we put forth that encourages students to still log on to Success Maker, to still log on to Zern because we provided access, and what makes a student want to do that for 30 minutes in the summer. In addition to that, we're making sure that our partners, the library and such, have access to our access points for people to get in. And so are we ensuring that our rec centers and our libraries can get to the Seesaw, can get to the Zern and our Success Maker so that when students come into those places, they are able to access. So that was the free additional option. I'm sorry. In terms of the response to CBOs, we have shared with our community-based partners that for this summer, we have restricted access to building use in terms of the number of programs that RCSD has running and the number of programs that RCSD has running and the number of projects under construction that happens makes it hard to dole out additional buildings within the district. And so we shared very early on, probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago, that for this summer, we would be reducing or restricting the access to our CBOs that weren't already in force inside of buildings. The additional information that we shared with our partners is that we're really also thinking about quality of program and quality of access. And so our CBOs that have historically been with us have served a small population of our students, about 1,200. And there are measures around finance, measure about quality, and then as you mentioned, health and safety that we are attending to. And so we did share in that we would not be allowing facilities use this summer. The third piece, and you're gonna hear me pause and be really deliberate because I don't want to sound confusing or convoluted. When we attend to unfinished learning, some people call it learning loss. When we attend to unfinished learning, the thing that we are paying close attention to and working to support our teachers and our staff to pay close attention to is when our students come back to the school buildings, what do we know about what they've learned thus far and what they need to learn? When you attend to unfinished learning, what becomes really important is our ability as teachers and educators to say, here's what the grade level information is, and how do we provide access points and learning experiences for our kids to meet the grade level. So it's not about going back and lowering the level or lowering the information that kids get. It's more about teachers figuring out through multiple exposures to stuff, through giving additional content information, through giving multiple opportunities to try something that then helps students close the gap between where they are and where we need them to be, which is at grade level. So I'll pause there, and hopefully that unfinished learning response gave a little bit more information to address what our plan around instruction is.
I'm just going to add, I think I would actually prefer to see something in writing so that we're all on the same page and we can all speak to any parent who has concerns about what to expect for the fall.
Yep.
And I have to include my own child in the mix, right? She's going to be transferring to 5th grade. I share the same concerns many parents do. I don't know how much she's actually learned versus lost, because I don't have the capacity to monitor and grade those things at this point. But I do share concerns that she's not going to be ready for 5th grade. And if I share some concerns, I'm going to keep it at that. I want to see it in writing. The other piece, though, about our summer buildings, I just have to state that this is what it sounds like that what we're doing as a district is telling community-based organizations who are going to service our kids, whether it's 100 or 1,200, it's 100 or 1,200 of our students that we're not doing anything with, that they can't use our buildings, and we're going to shun kids out of our school buildings, even though they're going to be empty because we're not providing full summer school year round for all kids in the district. Based on COVID and construction, we've always had construction. The modernization projects have been going on for a number of years. And that's what I hear. And I have to tell you all, that sounds absolutely ludicrous to me, that that's the logic that we're going with. And I also hear what you're saying, that there are some CBOs that we need to evaluate and look at the outcomes and the relationships that we've had. And I think we can do that and have a plan ready for next summer. But to shut our CBOs out now, this summer, in this critical turning point of COVID, where kids are literally suffering from mental health because they've been shunned in and isolated for over a year, I just cannot support that. And I will continue to bring this up until we figure out a way to work in collaboration with our CBOs to open up our schools that are going to be empty and have been empty for over a year, so that we can allow, even if it's 100 kids, but the fact that it's 1,200 students back into some social settings, back with some supervised staff, and the opportunity to re-engage on a social emotional level, I'm all there for it. So I just want to put that out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. I think Dr. Black was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to respond, Dr. Black? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'll respond in group.
No, go ahead. You can respond now.
I think the one thing, Commissioner LeBron, two things I would like to add is we are actually working on the unfinished learning plan, so that is public facing, so that parents, community members, students can know what to expect as we do that work. So that is actually in motion. So I want to just name that. I think the second thing that I would also like to just share around our CBOs, which I'm not sure is public knowledge, but want to put it out there, is that all of our CBOs over the course of a couple of years, so the decision, not all, the decision to limit access to buildings did not come lightly. And I think there are some financial considerations that were also at play when the decision was made around the participation fees, the fact that we provided also some instances transportation, some instances food service, building use, and paid a partnership fee to some of our CBOs that also went into that decision. So as we think about the quality controls and ensuring that we provide the right levels of access to the right types of programs, in addition to facilities use and health and safety, that quality bar and the at cost also play into that. And so I am more than happy in additional meetings or places to provide like the paper of those decisions, but we did not arrive at that lightly. And I am hearing you, and we'll go back to our team to see what, if anything, can be done to get closer to where we would all like to be for 2021 and ultimately 21, 22.
Before I call on Commissioner Powell, Melody, I see your hand up. Did you want to add on to this conversation?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to also add that we're going to be running 2 separate summer programs for middle school students this year. We are going to have about 200 young men through MBK. We're having a summer experiential learning for them. That's going to be housed at Monroe. And we're having a bilingual linguistic program for middle schools as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Powell, sorry for the long delay.
That's fine. Dr. Black, the two separate issues. The first is, could you describe a little bit the negotiating process with the zoo, the art gallery, the museum, other experiential learning opportunities, to let us understand, are we paying full price for admissions so that students can achieve access at free or reduced rates, or are we negotiating with these partners such that such that they're offering us reduced price tickets?
So this is not going to be a satisfactory answer in this moment, in that that is a work in progress. And our team is currently working with the potential partners to identify where we can get reduced costs. There are programs that are available through like a different stream that provides access to some of the museums for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so we're exploring all of those options, and we'll commit to responding in writing via question log as those things move forward. But to be, I would like to actually say for you all to know that we're being diligent and thoughtful about our resources, and our babies deserve to have access, and we should be able to provide that. But I will come back to you with where we ultimately landed around those efforts.
I appreciate that, and I hope it is recorded for the question log. Because some of these partners have suffered no real financial hardship, and I would hate to have us be exploited because we have this new federal monies for to help us respond to summer learning loss and what have you. So my second point is more a tangent, and it's for my colleagues. Your presentation showed spent a little bit of time on professional development and best practices, sharing of best practices. And our last policy committee meeting, we had a conversation about long-term financial planning. And I want to just plant the seed with my colleagues that possibly professional development is something we want to include in the language of such a new policy, so that we can support the administration, in a long-term professional development plan, in the same way that we support the administration in a long-term, in our textbook adoption process, which, as we know, doesn't turn on a dime. The committee meets over the course of months and years to pick textbooks. And, when they're done with their work, they want to be able to pay for those textbooks. So we have to have our plan in place before the decision is made. And likewise with professional development, we need to make sure the money is there, the board it's not the board's job to decide what kind of professional development to put out there. But we do need to make sure that we're supporting you, and the decision-making in one budget doesn't necessarily support a long-term professional development plan. That's why we need to integrate that into a long-term financial plan. So that there is going to be an email coming at you, both my colleagues and the administration, asking folks to think about that and give me feedback as to whether that's what they want to see in a long-term financial management policy. So thanks for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, Vice President. Just a quick question. Dr. Black, if you could tell us, do you happen to know if the Summer LEAP enrichment program is still being offered through Allendale Columbia? I know that we had stopped that program at some point. So I am wondering if that program is going to be offered in the future, as in terms of not just catching students up, but also offering enrichment for those students who might need it.
I do not know. I believe that I've heard, but let me check and confirm and then respond back, please.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Klingscale, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
My first one is that I want to know, what is the ratio for summer school for high school students versus elementary?
Okay, so we have about 1,500 seats across our receivership schools. We have about 750 seats in our commencement high school. We have another number of seats in our accelerated program. And then we have seats across a number of different programs, as Ms. Martinez alluded to. We have seats for our secondary, which is 7 and 8 in MBK, seats in our English language learners. And I can actually give the exact numbers in the question log after this meeting.
So
Okay.
she's asking about the number of students that are in the high school program versus the elementary program.
Yeah, the ratio, what is it, 50 to 40, 60
Yeah.
to 30? What is the ratio?
I don't want to misquote exact numbers. I will say that we have 300 seats in our elementary comprehensive, 750 seats in our high school comprehensive, and then we have about 1,500 seats in our receivership schools, which serves pre-K or K through 12. So I would like to go back and get the exact ratios for you, but we have seats across our continuum and in our specialized and centralized programs.
And then my next question would be, in your lost learning planning, you said something about them being able to log in for 30 minutes a day, or one of the programs that they could log into. What is the realistic expectation, being that our students have already checked out virtually? So what do you really expect? Do you really expect these students to log in for 30 days? I mean, for 30 minutes a day to try to upgrade their learning when they've already checked out right now?
So in full transparency, I expect that our students do what they need to do to get what they need in the summer. And so the difference between us in the school year and us in summer sometimes is the influence. We're going to make available to students all the options that they have available around electronically logging in, and share what's available to them, and share with them what our hope and expectations might be. But I can share my expectations, or the expectations of a program. So for instance, we have one program. To see really good growth, a student would log on to that program 20 to 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, right? So I would hope, or I'm going to hope, and as we share that, here are the programs, students that you still have access to, and here's how you should be using them. So I would hope that students will attend to that. We will, again, I share, incentivize. And so like, I'll date myself, but way back when I was a student, we read books in the summer and we got Book It coupons to get pizza. Book It may not be available, but we can think about how we have students aggregate minutes, log in, and then figure out how we reward students to do things above and beyond in the summer, and make it available. So our deposit is to make it available, to incentivize it, and then support students in attending to what they can attend to this summer with the provisions that their families or the libraries or our partnerships are able to make.
Okay, and so I want to just discuss the CARE Act, because I know the CARE Act is something that is put into place to help us get our kids back on track. So I guess I'm a little concerned, with all this money sitting here, that we're not being, as a district, more aggressive on really trying to bring our kids where they should be. Because if we are honest with ourselves, we know our kids is a year behind. Some of them already started at a year behind. So some of our kids are almost 2 years behind. So what is our realistic goals? What are we really, really doing to actually help these kids get back on track? We gotta stop, we gotta be more aggressive with that CARE
money
Act
will be
money.
used for the
Why aren't we trying to make a more comprehensive program for these kids? Because when they do come back in September, it's gonna be difficult.
But that
So
money,
why aren't we
Dr.
trying to pad that?
Yeah, Dr. Myers-Small, is for the next school year, correct?
It can be used during the summer, Vice President Elliott, but Ms. Clinksdale, one of the things that, remember, we're still gathering information because that's a requirement for the money. So we are hearing from parents, we're hearing from the community, from students, staff, the board, etc. So we are still gathering that. But as you said, we're working on trying to get some activities just to get our scholars re-engaged back in. If you've been in a remote environment for 16 months, how many of our students are going to come rushing in to 29 days of school? So we are trying to we're trying to hook some scholars through summer school because we know some students, and Dr. Black gave the report on that. But we also want to get brains moving again. We want to get our children moving out and about. And I think the document that the Division of Teaching and Learning is working on relative to unfinished learning is going to help to address that, because we've got to stop applying. And I'm not pointing at you, but we need to be realistic, but we can't just think deficit. We also have to realize and capitalize on what they do bring to the classroom and what they're bringing to their schools every day. So we're trying to create some activities that are getting scholars just engaged back, getting them into social environment. But I know that we're going to have some scholars that aren't going to want to come to summer school, even if we had 10,000 seats available. So we're trying to create multiple options and opportunities to engage students. The library, that partnership is going to be incredible, where scholars can go in and participate. There are going to be mobile units that are going and pop-ups that are going to come all over the city. So we've worked hard to create many opportunities for scholars to connect back with school, to connect back with one another, and to connect with opportunities.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else, Ms. Clinkscale?
No, that's it for right now.
So the question I would have before we end, Dr. Black, has to do with our evaluation measure. I mean, how are we benchmarking the final results from the academic year and positioning our students for success after the summer program, and that they're positioned for the next school year? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure.
And if I've asked the question correctly.
You're completely fine. So at the end of this school year, schools will have their multiple measures. So you have your teacher-created assessments. You have something called NWEA, which a lot of parents have seen, which captures how students have grown over the year. And you have some other assessment measures, such as Ames Web, teachers' internal DRAs, or internal assessments they would use to say, hi student, let's go from what you know, what have you learned. We recognize that as part of our academic monitors plan, one of the things she's encouraging us and supporting us to do is to create a more comprehensive assessment plan, which is what I alluded to in the slides, that we're in the process of building out our overall assessment plan, so that at the end of actually the beginning of this school year, where we have baseline data. So what do we know about what kids know right now? And then at the end of next school year, what do we know about what they've learned? So we're gonna take what we have this year, again, our NWEA, our Ames Web, some of our teacher-made assessments, use that to inform some of our planning. We're gonna then in the fall, so beginning of next school year, benchmark and baseline all of our students. And then we'll have multiple assessment measures over the course of next school year to then speak to and track over time how our students are moving towards proficiency and grade level achievement.
And just lastly, I'd like for you to come back to us in September, October sometime to tell us, was the summer school worth it? I mean, are we spending the money in the right way for summer school? You know, is summer school worth us doing? So thank you very much, Dr. Black. I appreciate the presentation. And so we're here from our state monitor, Dr. Jallo, who will discuss the academic piece of the state monitor's plan.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I really like to start this presentation. Well, it's not really a presentation, but I'd like to start my discussion by referring back to the summer school presentation or discussion that just took place. And if you look back in the academic plan, it's very specific about the type of items that are expected for a summer school program. Some of the items include an evaluation process. What's the structure for leadership? How are you going to supervise teachers and others during the summer school? So I would submit to you to take a second look at that, and you'll see some very definitive ask fors as it relates to the summer school program for this year. That's part of the academic plan. So I think if you stick to that, you should have a really robust understanding as to what the summer school program was, whether it worked, how much it costs, and did you get your return on investment in terms of the number of children who earned credits or the number of children who graduated. So I just wanted to add that. To get back more formally to the purpose of the evening, this is the second quarter quarterly report that the district had to respond to. So just to go back in terms of the sequence of events, This second quarter represents January, February, and March. So I need everybody to keep that in mind. And the idea is the first step is for the district to respond based on the items that were due during that time, whether or not those items were in fact done. And just to go back to the colors again, blue means it was started and it was finished, it's done. Green means they are on track to get that recommendation done in its entirety. Yellow means that you are not on track to get that done on time in its entirety. And red symbolizes a violation that for some reason district was unable to perform that recommendation, just as a reminder. So the district responded, and I believe the district sent to the board their responses to the academic and the financial plan. And they sent that to the board for feedback and for familiarity so that you're aware of how they are responding to the plans. And then it's turned over to the state and to me for me to respond as to whether or not I agree with their findings. Is everybody clear about the sequence? First, the district responds, gives it to the board gives feedback, then district officially gives it to me and to my colleagues at SED for response, and I send the response back as to whether or not I agree with the findings. With that being said, yeah, question?
No.
With that being said, everyone, I decided to create a chart that showed where there were variances, where there were differences between what the district said and what I am claiming based on my observation and my examination of evidence. So, for instance, this first one, district leadership shall establish a protocol for regularly reviewing resolutions prior to presentation to the board. The administration, as you can see, gave them, awarded themselves blue, which means it was done and it was finished. And I gave it a yellow, which means I do not believe that, first of all, that it warrants a blue, but second of all, I believe that they're behind schedule in accomplishing this recommendation. So I want to give that as an example. The next one happened in a few instances where it went from blue to green. Both of them are good. They just have different purposes. Blue gives the indication that it was started and it's ended. And green gives the indication, I think it's a better rating because it shows that the recommendation was started and will continue, that this is something that is good and should continue throughout the period of time that everybody's together working in this capacity. So that's why that one went from blue to green. If you go down, I want to show one where we had to make a modification. Okay, so let me stop here. In this particular one, the administration thought it was green. I thought it was red. After additional information and conversation and so forth and so on, we agreed on a yellow designation. Right, so the state asked me to return to the district and give them another week as an opportunity to resolve issues that were in the red. And so we did that, and in these two cases that you see, they went from red to yellow, in that after further conversation and examination of additional information, we were able to agree on a yellow designation. Are there any questions thus far? Okay, so yellow still is not a rating that we want to aspire to, because yellow indicates that we are not on track to complete the recommendation in time. It also indicates that perhaps a modification might have been warranted but was not submitted, or just a difference of opinion. So that's why conversations take place. If you go down a little bit further, by the way, these are all just from the academic plan. Okay, in this particular case, I agreed that it was green, that they were doing everything was going well, but there was one area, 1.3, I don't remember what it is right now, but that was an area where I felt it was a violation, and we were able to come up and say that was in fact yellow. What I'm hoping is that yellows and reds are not forgotten, particularly the yellows, but the work is done to turn those ratings around into something more positive, like a green or blue, depending on the recommendation.
Dr. Jallo, could you just for the audience define the colors, green?
The colors again, sure.
Please.
Blue is a recommendation. Let me see if we can get an example. Do we have a blue recommendation on here? Can someone move it up or down? Okay, here's a blue. Establish bi-weekly meetings with an academic district leadership team representing offices responsible for finance, enrollment, placement, accountability, and human capital technology to discuss staffing allocations and projections, right? The district gave themselves a blue, which is fine. I changed it to green because I don't want this to stop. I want this to continue to occur. Blue indicates it was something that started and stopped. It had a beginning and an ending. I gave it a green because green means this is something that the district is doing. They're doing well. They're on track. It's timely and it's positive. So that's the green and the blue. That's the distinction between the green and the blue. The distinction between yellow and red. Green is we're operating and we're on time and we're operating in a timely fashion to get things done. Yellow is we're operating, but we may not be operating in a timely fashion, or we're operating, but we're not operating to the full extent and intent of the recommendation. And so that's how you get a yellow, right? Red, we have a serious problem. Either there wasn't any evidence, or the work has not begun, or the work is not happening. There's a variety of reasons why that might occur. We definitely don't want that, but we also don't want the yellow either. So those are the colors. Go down. Okay, this one, implementation of approved RTI plans. This is important for a variety of reasons, and I want to just spend a moment on this. So when I look for evidence, I'm not just looking for evidence from the people who produce these things. I'm looking for evidence from the people who are the end users. And the end users are principals and teachers and how they support students. This is particularly timely and significant for a variety of reasons. First of all, RTI is a state regulation, has been for many, 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 many years, right? So the fact that we're not doing this and doing this with full fidelity is of concern. But aside from the regulation, this is a system that's part of MTSS that you hear many speak about that helps teachers and schools identify children when they show early on that they're struggling either academically or socially or behaviorally, they're having a challenge. And these teams of people in the school come together to try to study and understand what's happening to that child, what's preventing that child from being successful. And they start to design a little plan to help that child be successful. And they monitor to see if what they've done for that child has been successful. And then they come back again. It's a very cyclical process. It's a very critical process to catch children early on when they first show any sign of challenge, difficulty, problems in the school setting. So the fact that this may not be up and running to its fullest capacity in every single school, every single day is of concern. So we've had many conversations. I think at this point in time, the district is on the right track to try and reverse this. But this is important and this is significant, not because it's in the plan, not because Jallo says so, but because it has a significant impact on the children, especially now as you start to have conversations about interrupted learning that children have experienced, all right? The yellow on the summer is for the reason expressed. There was a time given when summer school was expected to be completed, right? It was expected to be completed so that it could be shared with the public, so that the public could make decisions for their children about what they wanted to do as it relates to summer school or other activities for the summer. The other reason why this is yellow is because there are components of the summer school plan that are still works in progress.
Dr. Jallo, so when should our program, our summer program, be complete and ready for our families to make a decision on? What timeline are you recommending for that?
In other districts where I have worked or been associated, we start putting messaging out in February. After that, after the first semester or second marking period, we have enough evidence to put up some, I don't want to call it warning, heads up communication that your child is at risk of not passing, and that we are starting to design summer school programming for children who qualify, who may need this help in order to pass the grade or pass a course or graduate. We start that in February, but certainly think of your parents who are trying to make decisions as if it were summer camp. What will I do with my child for the summer? So the sooner you can get this communication out, I think the better. I think now is late, but if that's the norm in Rochester, then so be it. But I think the earlier you can do it, the better, so that people can make appropriate plans and decisions for their families during the summer. But that varies from district to district, but I would have liked to have seen it earlier than I'm seeing it now. But I do feel that they're on the right track, and there are a lot of key components that have been done. My main concern at this point is not so much the timing, although it is of concern. My main concern is, okay, so you have a summer school program. What will the student experience in that classroom or on Zoom or whatever the case may be for those 3 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever? What will the academic or social emotional or whatever experience be? What will they be learning? What's the content? How do I know that if I attend this, I will be able to then pass? So I have more questions about the instruction and the design of the instructional model for summer school. I mean, I think everything else is fine, but now the rubber hits the road when a child walks into the classroom and knows that they failed something or knows that they are at risk of not graduating. What exactly is happening behind those closed doors? What's the instructional model? And that has not been fully fleshed out to my attention. Not to say it hasn't been done, but I have not seen it as yet. The next one is an interesting one. It was green and I made it red because there has been a lot of conversation around this, but there hasn't been any traction. And I'm looking for evidence of traction, evidence of production, not evidence of conversation, not evidence of meetings, but evidence of production. In this particular case, we had a good conversation and we came to an agreement that this particular recommendation needs a modification not just on the time, but a modification that kind of bifurcates this recommendation into two different areas with two different groups of people responsible, because through conversation, and that's why conversation is very powerful, we learned that many of these old, outdated materials are sitting in warehouses, which by the way, you're paying for, to just be stored. And then the other half of these outdated curriculum materials are sitting in your school buildings, right? So I am of the belief that you have to remove most of these outdated materials. Otherwise, people may default and go back to what's familiar and comfortable and start to use them again, even after you've brought the new updated material. So I think this is very important. I think we now have the right people who should be involved. I think the administration will send forth a modification to change the date and to change the actual content of this recommendation to better reflect where these materials are and who is responsible for supervising their removal. This next one, on the document I received, there was no rating for the comprehensive assessment program. We have had many, many conversations. it's moving along. It's not moving along at a pace I'd like to see. However, it's moving along, and I think that it's going to be expedited during the summer where, after certain other questions are answered. So I'm confident that that will be a better rating in the future. But this is also very, very, very important. You need to know how to measure the performance of your students so that you can then identify how you're going to support them. So absent something that's comprehensive to assess your students, and I'm not just talking about tests, but whatever it is, this has to be established. It needs to be comprehensive. So the community, parents, board, and administration can clearly understand and communicate to anyone who asks, how are our children doing, and show data to back up their responses to such a question. The next one, high school selection process. I've been in conversations and we've agreed on a modification for this one. Some work has been done on this area, and it's still under a work in progress, but I'm very happy with the progress that's being made here. But this is also very significant because it's going to impact at some point in time just about every family in the district, how they go about selecting high schools for their students. So this is very important. I'd rather them take more time to get this as right as it can be. So that's why it's yellow there, because it's still a work in progress. I don't know if you have any questions about any of the others, or if you want me to just keep going through each one.
If you all have any questions, I can't see the screen. Just sort of chime in, commissioners, if there are any questions.
I do have a question, Dr. Jallo, and to the administration. I'm not sure if you showed them this and what their response is. And I'm just thinking back to when Dr. Aquino was here, he would, I believe that he would give the administration their ratings up front and then ask them to respond to it. So this is a little bit newer for me, that the administration is kind of rating themselves, and then the state monitor is giving their ratings, and then they're not adding up. And so this is the second time in the last 2 months we've kind of been in this position, because we were there with the finance piece of it too. So just trying to understand what that communication looks like, but then also how does the administration then respond? Because this goes to the state, this becomes the record for the district.
So there was a meeting with administration and the commissioner and SED to discuss this. And I believe it's fair to say that she expressed some concerns about the variance between some of these areas. And maybe this chart doesn't do it justice, because the majority of both the plans showed, agreement in the ratings between administration and myself. But this chart is just specifically for the variances, so maybe that's why we're highlighting those things. But the sequence of events that I described are pretty much it. It starts with administration rating themselves and sharing with the state how they rate themselves based on the recommendation. And then it's up to me to agree or disagree or make some recommendations for improvement.
I guess my question would be, and it kind of contributes to the variance, should anything be blue? Because when the administration put blue and you put green, you basically saying that they are meeting the objectives, but they should continue to meet them. So is there anything that really should be in blue? Because it seems like it should always be green, because you don't want to.
You should see, what you want to see is mostly green, because if it's a good practice, it's something you want to continue. But there, and now I'm at a loss, but there were a few recommendations where it's very specific. You needed to create something, or you needed to, and so once it's created, it's created. So that there's number one. There's not a lot like them, but you're right. It should be, what you really want is some of the blue for those type of specific, and mostly green. That's what you're hoping to see.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Dr. Jallo at this point? Okay, Dr. Jallo.
Thank you.
Dr. Jallo, are you just going to finish the few that are violations? I think that's what we're waiting.
That's what I turned. Do you want me to go through more, or you've had enough? You know, I can go through more. The other one that I really want there are two that I really want to highlight. I want to highlight the theory of action around receivership schools, right? And myself as state monitor, SED, my colleagues over there are going to always be laser focused on anything related to receivership, right? There's not going to be a gray area. It's either going to be there or it's not going to be there. Theory of action and some of the other recommendations in the plan around receivership well, it's all serious, but it's very serious. We have to do something to make sure that receiverships become a thing of the past for this district. This district has more receivership schools than New York City, and we have to turn that tide around. And so it starts with what you value, what you believe about turnaround schools. What do you believe it takes to turn around a school? And many in the field refer to that as your theory of action. What is your theory of action around how you're going to provide value added as a district to your receivership schools to get them off this list? And it's a challenge. It's a hard challenge. It's one that's also been expressed by the commissioner to administration. This is serious. I broke out the part about benchmark data every 4 to 6 weeks because through conversation and agreement, myself and the chiefs have agreed to have those meetings every 4 to 6 weeks to discuss what they're finding out in all their schools, but with a focus on the receivership schools. But this is an area where the district has to turn this around. There are too many receivership schools, and principals tell interesting stories about their experiences. I sit in on all the SED meetings for receivership schools and go into all the classrooms and look at their data and so forth and so on. And so this is an area that I would encourage administration to apply as much attention to as possible. I understand even SED has hired someone to oversee receivership schools at the state level because they feel that they need more support in their department around this area as well to support those schools throughout the state, but surely and particularly in Rochester. The next one under culture shift, that one we're in good. And this is a perfect example, Commissioner Clark, where don't stop, keep going. Yeah, you did it, but I want you to keep going. Don't take it down. Make sure that that becomes not just that it's on your website, but it gets ingrained into your culture, that we're not just talking about race, we're talking about culture, religion, language. We participated in a professional development today about English language learners. And, so it just has to be ingrained into the community. So you want that to continue. Parent engagement is a challenge. We've had some conversations about this, and this is just an area where more focus is going to have to be placed in order to change that rating around. But that's a challenge now. I think they're on a good track to change this around 360 degrees, but we'll wait to see the evidence of that, okay? But I will say that I'm pleased with the conversations that have taken place with Deputy Martinez and for some reason I can't remember Khadijah's last name, but if anybody can help me, we've had conversations with her to discuss this, and I think that can turn around. This is more parent engagement, similar things. Yeah, we just need to work with parent engagement to get them to the place where we need them to be, and I feel confident that that will happen. Finally, going down to this last part, yeah, that's just a green. Okay, here's a challenge here, right? So you put green, I put yellow. Adhere to staffing allocations as stipulated in collective bargaining agreements, right? So this is a case where you do have evidence, but the evidence you have contradicts this being green, right? So you have a budget book that clearly identifies the staffing allocations, and they are nowhere near what's in the collective bargaining unit. So that's just a fact. But there's still time to work through that as the district goes through their growing pains to see how that's going to come through. But that one was pretty kind of open and shut in terms of what's in the budget book and how staffing was allocated based on the budget for next year. And that's it. These are just some general recommendations. And this has been shared with administration collectively and individually. And this has been shared with SED, and it has been shared with you, I believe, twice. So that's my presentation for this evening, unless you have additional questions, which I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Jallow. Any questions, commissioners? I'm assuming that Dr. Myers-Small, in your presentation, you would probably respond to some of the reactions of some of the recommendations from the state monitor. So thank you, Dr. Jallow, much appreciated. And so Dr. Myers-Small is up next with her responses to the academic plan from the state monitor. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott, and good evening to everyone. As Dr. Jallow stated, on June 3rd, 2021, we met with Commissioner Rosa, with Deputy Commissioner Kim Wilkins, and many of her assistant commissioners in the P12 unit. Dr. Jallow was also there, Ira Swartz was there, and our deputy superintendents, our CFO, Carlene Pierce, and Medi Sol, as well as Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Kathy Black. And we had an opportunity to conduct a presentation, which I'm going to show each of you, that provided the following: highlights for the academic and fiscal plans, areas of challenge with implementation. We added steps to mitigate the challenges. We talked about violations and how we plan to move forward. Dr. Jallow really went in depth around those, so I feel I can just give a little bit of a highlight on that again or reiterate, and then recommended updates for 21-22. So I'll begin just again, the strategic plan that I'm so grateful that each of you unanimously approved really focuses on 4 areas, and that's in providing high quality learning experiences, ensuring that we have an inclusive, caring learning, safe learning environment that will build strong community, and that we will indeed foster dynamic leadership. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk about when I focus on areas of challenge with implementation, we as a district have multiple plans, multiple expectations that are placed on us both internally, externally with the state, as well as the consent decree. So we have really come to some focused conclusions around how we'll move forward in the 21-22 school year. So if we look at just some updates as far as highlights relative to the academic plan. And again, Dr. Jallow mentioned what she showed each of you individually and collectively was where there were discrepancies between what we self-rated us for each of the categories in the academic and the fiscal plans, and then how she rated us. So highlights in the academic plan, and you did hear about this a little bit from Dr. Black, is that you know that we have a lot of work to do relative to district-wide comprehensive program, materials, textbooks, and assessment tools. So Dr. Black and her team have been very busy over the past several weeks, and will be very busy in the summer to make sure that we do have curricular materials in place, that working with our content directors, making sure that textbooks are refreshed, the literacy program, which is in its second year, we continue to move forward, and that certainly district-wide assessment and interventions are complete so that we can have accurate, targeted information to help us make good academic decisions. As Dr. Jallo mentioned, the area that we received yellow as far as establishing the program evaluation arm, Dr. Morris and her team have been working very significantly on that. We will be adding additional staff. That was in the budgeting process. So we'll make sure that the multiple programs that we have, and Vice President Elliott mentioned, okay, I'd like you to come back in October and talk to us about what worked and possibly what didn't work and what possible adjustments might be needed to be made. So this would be where that arm of the district would come into play and would conduct that analysis for presentation to the board and others. So that's something that we have and will continue to focus on. You did hear about summer programming to address unfinished learning, and we continue to make sure that those programs are in place and moving forward to support unfinished learning. And then professional development, which I know Commissioner Powell mentioned, is we want to make sure that as we have scholars coming back full-time, 5 days a week, that we have professional development that helps them to help our scholars make that transition back, but also with all of the academic, curricular, anti-racism, et cetera, expectations and requirements that we have, that they will be thoroughly prepared to do that or begin to be prepared for that. As far as highlights from the financial plan, you all know that we have celebrated the fact that we have the elimination of the revenue anticipation note, or the RAN, and we'll be discussing that tomorrow night when we go before City Council to have our conversation with them. You know that our current financial management software is not a comprehensive platform and certainly doesn't serve the needs of the district in finance, in human resources, or budget development, and we've actually been slowed down. And so our current program really is outdated as far as functionality, and it requires folks in Glenn Shop, IM&T, to develop programs known as patches to accommodate the needs. So switching to a new financial system is absolutely critical, and that was something that we've moved forward. You also know, relative to special education, which we are making progress and continue to make progress, we're going to have a management system that we are targeted to have in place by January of 2022. We can provide detailed reports in related services. We can help pinpoint areas of concern much more quickly with this program. Medicaid reimbursement, which has been problematic, will be streamlined. And it's really important, as indicated in our financial plan, that we improve our IEP process so that our reimbursements can be improved upon. And then we certainly are pleased that we have a balanced budget. As far as areas of challenge with implementation, and you heard a little bit about that from Dr. Jallo as she talked through, but I'll bring a little more life to it. Certainly just prioritizing all our systems and structures. This is no fault or blame on anyone currently or previously, but there is still a lot that we need to put in place in the district as far as systems and structures to make sure that we are moving forward, that we operate in ways that are meaningful, that are successful, and that are productive. And so we need to make sure that we have those in place. So for example, the SOPs, or the standard operating procedures, so that we know that if we have a particular area, say special education or the superintendent's office, that we have procedures in place that we can follow. And so that things are handled not identically, but they are handled uniformly with some consistency. Another area of issue certainly is the cadence of reporting. So as Dr. Jallo stated, this update that we provided to the State Education Department on the 3rd of June, it reflected January, February, and March, which seems like now a long, long time ago. And so the timing of us requesting modifications, the timing of communication between the quarterly reporting, and really also determining the best quality of evidence to present progress to Dr. Jallo. So that has been an issue for us. And then when we talk about competing priorities, we have the academic and the fiscal plans that were developed by the state monitor that we have agreed to. So those are our plans, certainly, but we also have the strategic plan. We have the corrective action plans, which include the bilingual education and special education. And we also have the consent decree. So we have multiple accountability structures, multiple plans. We have, and then we have competing stakeholder interests. And so that's certainly not an excuse at all, but just explaining to you what some of those issues are as far our challenges relative to implementation. But we just don't want to say that we have issues or problems, or we don't want to, what I like to call, we don't want to just to continue to admire the problem. So let's talk about what are we going to do? What steps are we going to take to help mitigate these challenges? First and foremost, we want to cultivate a shared vision. Can you please go to the next slide? And to ensure that we have integration of the multiple mandated plans, but we want to make sure that all of those plans really are accomplished through the lens of the strategic plan. And that is our foundational plan, the foundational document, which everything else flows through. So as I work with Dr. Morris over the summer and we look at any possible tweaks to the strategic plan, we want to make sure that everything that we need to do flows through that particular, through our strategic plan. Additionally, we want to make sure that those standard operating procedures are in place and that we review those with regularity, and that is included in the plan that Dr. Jallo talked about. The other thing is when we talk about the cadence of reporting requirements, we've made some shifts. So now that we have the following, that will establish a monthly reporting structure. So instead of waiting, at the end of March, beginning of April or May to talk through, we'll monthly look at, so we're now in June, so we'll look at the end of June. Where are we with all of the things that are due in June? But also we'll take a look back to those things that have been in yellow to make sure that those are moving to green and they are no longer yellow, and that they really become a regular part of our process. As Dr. Jallo mentioned, green means it's on track, but she wants to continue for it to occur. If things were blue, it means that we kind of can check the box off, and there are a few things that we can do, but really the purpose of having all of these recommendations, and just to remind you, there are 96 of them, that we need to make sure that this becomes a part of our practice and is a regular part of our repertoire. The other thing that we feel is critically important to mitigate these challenges is to increase the touch points between us and the state monitor. So having regular meetings, both formally and informally. And as we begin to have more in-person meetings, it's not just the formal, it's those informal connections and conversations. When Dr. Jallo's in her office and someone's coming either into the superintendent to see Medisol or to do some board business, if they see Dr. Jallo in her office, they can say, oh, Dr. Jallo, let me talk to you about my standing operating procedure, or let me talk to you about this particular aspect of the plan. So we're looking forward to increasing those touch points, and we have we're doing that in cabinet, executive cabinet, the deputies are meeting, as well as the school chiefs and others. So you heard about the violations that Dr. Jallo talked about, and those again are those areas that are in red, and those are those 5 areas that Dr. Jallo mentioned. So again, on the 3rd, we had the conversation with Commissioner Rosa and her team, and we have a meeting on this Friday, June 11th at 11 a.m. We will go over all of these violations, because we cannot have violations because this information gets uploaded to the state website. So we will make sure that we are clear that the evidence that we need to submit meets the expectations of Dr. Jallo, or if there are any other things that we need to do. For example, if we do need to have a modification, which she mentioned in some instances, that we will do that. One of the things that we also are working on relative to these violations, and this isn't about, well, we've got to do this because Dr. Jallow said it. It really is to improve, in most instances, the academic or social emotional conditions, but mostly academic conditions for our scholars in the Rochester City School District. So we will meet with her on Friday, make sure any other tidbits, either small or if there are larger things that need to be accomplished, we will ensure that we get that done and that we move forward so that it is, I don't want to say minimally yellow, but it has to be out of the red zone. And then finally, the State Education Department asked us to make recommendations around what might we want to see updated in the plan, because there can be some modifications. And so again, this is not to target or to be judgmental, but these are things as we are getting acclimated to the plan. And that's just one thing I just want to pause for just a moment and say that, we didn't know what we know. Dr. Zhao said, well, you agreed to these. Yes, we did. These are all things that we agreed to, but to the extent of what they needed to be done, you just don't know it until you get into it and you're actually doing the work. And some of these things are quite time consuming and requires us to minimally or significantly change the way that we are doing things. And so as we are moving forward, I just ask the board to consider, again, no excuse, but, in some instances, there was nothing in place or very little, or what we had in place was not adequate or did not suffice. So we are doing some significant changing in some instances. So that's why in some cases we do need to ask for a modification. And this is a delicate balance because we got feedback that we asked for many modifications, but in some instances we do need to ask for them. So we're just continuing to work through that progress, and we want to make sure that we certainly are satisfying what is outlined in the plan and that it's, again, improving the outcomes of our scholars in Rochester. But we have just 4 kind of big recommendations that certainly in some instances, something may be due in April when we say incongruent dates. With the systemic process, something may be due in April or March, and we really need to have that deadline moved to the end of the year because there might be an evaluation piece or there might be something around best practice. So we'll be asking for updates in some areas there. In some instances, there are inconsistent deadlines for similar requirements that appear in both the academic and the fiscal plan. So we just want to make sure that those are identical and that those line up. So there isn't anything. I think it's in the zone reconfiguration. In one plan it said April, and another it said May or something like that. So we just want to make sure there's consistent deadlines. And then there are some things in the financial plan that should be transitioned to academic and vice versa. So we'll make those formal requests for that to be an update. And then the last one is a review of the organizational structure alignment to support the district's strategic plan. So we're taking a look at just where some of those recommendations that are outlined in the plans, that we make sure that we are organizationally making the shift. So you heard Dr. Black say, for example, that the Department of Multicultural Education, or DOME, that typically sat in student services or support services, that now moves over to teaching and learning. So we'll be making some recommendations to the plan, but also we need to do some shifts organizationally as well. This certainly has been a learning process for all of us on the executive cabinet and others who have been involved in it. We do appreciate that this has made us better. In some instances, I'll be honest, it has been frustrating. We are still we're still getting used to one another and working together, and we're getting used to working with Dr. Jallow and making sure that we really understand what the expectations are. But we also do understand that the goal is really, you have a state monitor in place because things are not going well in certain areas in your school district and in your schools. And we recognize that we need to expedite and exponentially improve what we do in the Rochester City School District. So we're working, we're learning. In some instances, this is an awkward junior high school dance where we're bumping into one another, but we're listening to the song, we're getting the beat down, and we're learning to really walk in lockstep with one another, with Dr. Jallo, with the state, and what the requirements and recommendations are in the plans. And we look forward to coming to the board. This isn't a competition or anything like that, but we do look forward to coming to the board where we will have certainly congruence, number one, between what we rate ourselves on and how Dr. Jallo and the state rates us, but that you will see no red, you will see very few yellows, and that it will be predominantly green. And so we will be okay with singing the song, "It's Not Easy Being Green." We will be all right with that. But this has been a good process for us, and it's been professional development, frankly, for all of us. And we just look forward to making the district better with this process. And this is one of the opportunities for us to do so, because again, and Dr. Jallo reminded us, Commissioner Rosa reminded us, this is about improving conditions for the 25,000 scholars we serve. And that's what the bottom line is. And that's why we have to have urgency. And that's why we get the feedback that we do to make it better for them.
Thank you, Dr. Myers-Small. Oh,
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Powell, you have a question?
Observation. Madam Superintendent, this isn't a criticism of you personally or any of your team, but I want to say that I'm not surprised about to see the report say that there were violations with regard to the RTI. I remember now, of course, it's been what, 6, 7, 8 years now when East High was in danger of we had to make a choice of either close the school or get it into the EPO configuration. There was a very public admission that the school improvement plan was essentially created for the singular purpose of checking the box, the compliance box that the state required, and that it was written and then never looked at again. In your presentation, you said that in terms of standard operating procedures and so on, that there was nothing in place. And it's one in the same issue, but one of the ways that one of the steps that has to be taken to change that culture is that every level of leadership and supervision has to internalize that intervention plan and hold their subordinates accountable for what is written, and demand that the subordinates write down their actions, what they've done, and record the results of that, so that when we find out, or if we find out that the action plan has serious flaws, we can react to that because we have a paper trail. You know, I've said it over and over again, it's what in the Army we call the football. If you keep a record of what you've done, how it worked, how it didn't work, what you would do differently if you had a chance to do it over again, so that you're in a cycle of continuous improvement. And I just don't see evidence that we do that in this district. That's a cultural problem, and that's a leadership and supervision problem as well. So I think that, Madam Superintendent, from what you just reported, that you recognize that problem as well. And I can only hope that the next time you report out, you're going to be able to share with us that we're making progress in changing that culture and essentially upping the ante. So, another thing we learned in the military is that you have to know what success looks like. And a lot of our leaders have been in this district a long time, and they've never really seen really super great examples of what success looks like. So we have to grow that ourselves with this iterative process of trying stuff and recording what worked and brainstorming in an after action report what we could do better or differently the next time, because there will always be a next time. So thanks for letting me share that.
Ms. Klingscale?
Yeah, I actually don't feel like Commissioner Powell is far off. I mean, I've been sitting on this board for years, and I've always said we need to throw things against the wall to see what sticks. But for some reason, with our district, it's like we're so afraid to move outside of the predetermined box. We know that we struggle. We have been on the list for graduation rates as the last district for years. Yeah, and still, we still practice the same idealism. We still stick to the same program, no matter, and it's no disrespect to you, Superintendent Smalls. It's always, no matter who it is, it's always seem to stick around the same plan. We know this is not working for our kids. We got kids in our district that are in jail for murder. I don't know why we don't see that that's a cry for we're not doing the right thing. We need to really, and you guys as a board need to really come down, go to your districts, talk to your kids, talk to the staff, because trying to judge from statistics and numbers don't work. You have to be there to feel and see. Because what we're doing now is the same thing we've been doing before. Before you came on, Superintendent Smalls, we had Superintendent Barbara. She was so stuck on systems. Not once did I hear her think about the kids. We have to remember why a district exists. It's to help do productive young people, to increase them into a productive citizen. And if we look at ourselves truly, we know that we haven't been doing that. So, I'm not a, I'm not technically, I don't understand all the terminology sometimes that I listen to prior to bylaws and the rules. But me, myself personally, I've been working with kids for 34 years. I'm in your district. I'm in your schools. So I'm seeing it from two lenses. I'm seeing it as a parent, which 3 of my kids went through there, and it was a struggle for me. But I'm also seeing it as a community-based organization that has been in some of your more poor performing schools for some years. So my only thing is that, guys, we got to shift our thinking, reshift our thinking to our kids, and make decisions that are best for them. Because once we start doing that, then now we have a village that's going to actually, create comfortable spaces for our kids. And some of it don't even take a whole lot of money. I know we're doing revitalization of the schools, but simple things like making sure that when a kid walks into school, he feels like he's in a nice environment. So I think that a lot of times we get stuck on systems and what we have to do, and the kids get lost. And with me being, like I say, dealing with kids directly, I'm in the gutter, as they call it. It's just, sometimes I think you as commissioners, y'all need to go to your schools, spend some time with the students, listen to them. The youth will lead us if we allow them to. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Keep telling us that, Ms. Klingscale. We need to hear that all the time. Thank you very much. Any other items for the Equity and Student Achievement Committee? Then President White, I'll turn it back over to you. That concludes the committee, the Equity and Student Achievement Committee of the Whole. So President White, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Elliott. Thank you, Dr. Jallow. Thank you, Dr. Myers-Small, for your presentations. For some, it may sound at points very technical, but sometimes you have to get into the weeds and understand the methodology for fixing a district that, helping us restore a district that has had some challenges in some areas. So we appreciate and respect the time it took for both of you to provide that detailed and thorough discussion of where we're at and where we need to be. Next item on the agenda is new business. Commissioner Powell and I were speaking earlier today about an event involving the New York State School Board Association. Commissioner Powell, you want to just briefly tell the folks what your very reasonable ask is?
Sure. Thank you. The New York State School Board Association's annual convention will be resuming again this year in person in October 24 through 26. As you all know, I go every year as a board member representing the Big Five, and NYSBA pays for my trip, but RCSD needs to send a voting delegate to the annual business meeting, and it should not be me. It's strongly recommended that NYSBA board members not represent their home districts during the business meetings for voting. And this year in particular, one of the sunsetting resolutions is being recommended for renewal, but I'd like to have us offer up an amendment. I'd like RCSD to do that, though we can do that. We can talk about the specifics at a future meeting. But in that process, our voting delegate would have to speak for that amendment and bring it to the floor. So most definitely should not be me. So I'm first and foremost want to find out if there's anybody already planning to go to the NYSBA convention. Again, it's October 24th to 26th. And if there's already someone planning on going, would you be willing to serve as our voting delegate?
I'm going so I can serve.
Okay.
I also
Just
see,
give me more information about it.
I also see a Commissioner Malloy raising her hand too.
Yeah, I was just going to volunteer, but prior to Vice President Elliott, if she prefers, she could certainly be the voting delegate, but I wanted to volunteer.
But there is a room for alternates. So, you know, if there's a schedule.
Commissioner Powell, if Amy wants to do it, that's fine. I didn't know if there was anybody else who's attending. So if she wants to do that, that's fine.
Oh, we'll work it out. If you prefer, you can go. I defer to you, Vice President.
Okay. So if one of you is the voting delegate and the other the alternate, that's great. Again, I'd like to in a future meeting talk about the amendment to a resolution that I'd like if for the district to sponsor it. It needs to be something we vote together on, but I don't want to take up too much time during this meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, once we've, obviously there's some interest from Vice President Elliott and Commissioner Malloy. So you guys can speak offline about who would be the actual voting delegate. And then you're right, the board would have to agree with respect to what the positions would be with respect to those particular votes. But I assume, as you said, that can happen at another meeting. I did want to make sure, I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell, I just wanted to make sure that I did speak to the clerk, wanted to make sure we had money in the budget for that. And then there's some additional protocols involving the independent monitor that the state imposed. So we have plenty of time to work that out. But our clerk did tell me that because nobody's done any traveling this year, that we have money in our budget for that travel, whether it's Commissioner Malloy and or Vice President Elliott. There is, as I understand it, ample money. Not that we have to spend it all, but we really are way under budget for our travel. So, Commissioner Powell, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain the reason I'm interested in pushing this off to a future meeting is that the NISBA Board of Directors does meet this weekend. And so I'll have a better idea when amendments have to be prepared for submission after this weekend.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll address those issues later on. Vice President Elliott, Commissioner Malloy, you guys work it out. The bylaws say the board president designates people in these positions. Whatever you guys work out is fine with me. And Commissioner Powell, I'll leave it up to you and whoever is going to bring this back up on some agenda so that we can have that vote that we need after it's clear to you what the vote is going to have to be about. You all set on that issue?
Thank you.
Yep, no, thank you for bringing it up. Folks, we do have to go into executive session on a couple of, actually, Kaya corrects me, it would be for next year's travel budget because that starts July 1. So, but again, I think we've been pretty prudent. I don't, Kaya, very quickly, what happens to that money or Dr. Myers from last year that we didn't spend? It just goes back into the general pool fund? Yeah.
Yeah,
But it gets swept back into the fund. Okay, well, we'll figure it out, and I'm sure you guys can work that out. So we'll just wait for a report back from you about who's going and what the vote is going to be about. All right, we do have to go into executive session on matters relating to, actually this wouldn't even be an executive session. We have to have some discussions with our attorneys regarding contractual issues. And I guess maybe now that I'm thinking about it, there's a second matter that does relate to a particular employee or person. So why don't we, just to be safe and to make sure we're doing it the correct way, why don't someone give me a motion to go into executive session to discuss the terms and conditions of employment for a particular person?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of going into executive session for the purpose of discussing the terms and conditions of a particular employee's employment indicate by turning on your video and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? So the ayes have it. For those of you who are still hanging in there and watching your Board of Education and all the committed district employees who are still with us at this meeting, we thank you. We are going to go into executive session, but I will tell you, based on the knowledge of these particular subjects, I don't anticipate that when we come back into open session to take our survey that you've seen us do many times before, that we'll be having any kind of meaningful vote. This pretty much ends the substantive part of our meeting. So the Board of Education would encourage you to go out, turn off your screens and spend time with your family and your loved ones and be safe. given the subjects that we discussed, I think we moved to the agenda pretty quickly. We have to take a survey. If you're still here, you'll witness us put our heads down, tapping little buttons, and then I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. The survey is up and we're taking it. For those of you who haven't seen our survey results, every once in a while we come back to the public and we tell them how we think we're doing on our job.
What is just here?
Okay. Tell me when we're ready, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Kalia.
I will.
Commissioner Wade.
That's right. Could be one day. She's shaking her head.
Prophesy.
I don't know.
Prophesy. Prophesy.
All right, we are done.
Okay, I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Second, Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of adjourning, say good night.
Good night, everybody. Enjoy.
Be safe.